If you're worried about the lack of safe banking for your cannabis business and the risks we see all the time about the handling of large amounts of cash, you might be considering accepting Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency as payment for your cannabis business. But before you do, you need to understand the risks and the complexities involved. So today I'm going to color outside the line just a little bit and talk all about cryptocurrencies and what you should know about them for your cannabis business. Now, if you've thought about it, I think you'll learn some things that maybe you didn't know. And if you've said something along the lines of, I'll never, I urge you to keep watching because there may be something that, well, you didn't know. I'll talk all about the pros and the cons as well as the regulatory considerations if you're planning to take a virtual currency as payment regardless of the vertical. So let's do this. Hi folks, Chip Schweiger, the Green Leaf CPA, and I help cannabis entrepreneurs build and grow exceptional businesses. Welcome to Ask the Green Leaf CPA. In today's video, let's talk all about cryptocurrencies and what you should know about them for your cannabis business. I'll talk about the pros and the cons, as well as the regulatory considerations if you're planning to take a virtual currency as payment, regardless of the vertical that you're in. But first, let's set the table just a bit. When we talk about cryptocurrencies, we're talking about a virtual currency. And a virtual currency can be defined as virtual money. It's issued by its developers and used within a given virtual community. Looking at it another way, cryptocurrencies are a digital representation of value that is neither issued by a central bank or a public authority, nor necessarily attached to a fiat currency, but is accepted as a means of payment and can be transferred, stored, or traded electronically. Now, the interesting thing about virtual currencies is they operate like a currency in some environments, but they don't really have all the attributes of a real currency. In particular, virtual currency does not have legal tender status in any jurisdiction. Now, that's starting to change, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Now, the IRS. The IRS defines a virtual currency as property, not as currency. So that complicates things even more, but we're going to get to that too. Hey, if you're new to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click the bell so that you'll always be the first to get my tips and tricks. Now, regardless of how you define it, there are three generally accepted types of virtual currencies. The first one is what we call single flow virtual currencies, and these are similar to coupons. Common examples are frequent flyer miles with airlines and Amazon coin. The currency can be purchased or it can be provided with a purchase and can be used to purchase goods or services from that provider, but cannot be purchased or exchanged on an open market. The second type is what's called convertible virtual currencies, and now these can be purchased and sold on exchanges and can be used to complete transactions with individuals, businesses, and governments. Bitcoin is the most well-known convertible virtual currency. And there's also growing talk about crypto tokens, which are a type of virtual currency that represents fungible and tradable assets or utilities that reside on their own blockchains. Crypto tokens are new and are a very niche product. Now, when you hear about a non-fungible token or an NFT, they're talking about a crypto token. All virtual currencies are based on a technology known as blockchain. And blockchains are really just a secure list of records held on diverse computers, which are called nodes, that are used to record and verify data. A cryptocurrency is a digital currency using cryptography to secure transactions and to control the creation of new currency units. Now, not all virtual currencies use cryptography, so cryptocurrencies end up being sort of a subset of the broader virtual currency population. Now, as I mentioned before, Bitcoin is the first and most famous cryptocurrency. First released in 2009, and according to legend, Satoshi Nakamoto actually began working on the Bitcoin concept 2 years earlier in 2007. While he's on record as living in Japan, it's actually speculated that Nakamoto may be a collective pseudonym for more than one person. So fast forward, and there are now thousands of different types of crypto coins on the market today, including some very specific ones. But cryptocurrencies in general and Bitcoin in specific have a relatively long history, but not without some controversy. So the Financial Action Task Force, which is sort of an intergovernmental group that develops and promotes policies to prevent money laundering and the funding of terrorists, they published a money laundering using new payment methods white paper. And they did it to warn about the use of digital currencies to finance terrorist groups back in 2010. And we read about almost every day about the scams involving Bitcoin or some other virtual currency. So some fun facts. On May 2nd, 2013, the first Bitcoin ATM in the world is debuted in San Diego, California. On November 19th, 2013, Bitcoin moves more money than Western Union, as Bitcoin transaction volume surpasses that of Western Union. And in October of 2021, El Salvador becomes the first country to recognize Bitcoin as legal tender. Now, one other thing to understand about Bitcoins is that they're not the only cryptocurrency being used on the internet. There are literally a multitude of initial coin offerings being sold to investors. Many organizations are looking to profit from the popularity of cryptocurrency, and investors hopes that they will get rich quick with a new virtual currency. There are other popular cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Dogecoin and one called Binance Coin that's interestingly pegged to the US dollar. And I say interestingly because the hallmark of cryptocurrencies is this sort of disdain for centralized banking. And there's even some marijuana-based cryptocurrencies, including Potcoin, and Cannabis Coin, and Dope Coin, and Hemp Coin, and Cannacoin. I just love all those names. Now, if you want to transact in cryptocurrencies, I really highly recommend that you use a virtual currency wallet to buy, store, and use virtual currencies. And this wallet is actually a software program that stores private and public keys and interacts with the virtual currency's blockchains. Don't use something else that somebody suggests to you. Don't use a sheet of paper or a spreadsheet. Use a wallet. The wallet doesn't store the virtual currencies or coins. It only maintains the information that allows the users to access the information for their transactions on that blockchain. When a virtual currency transaction occurs, nothing is actually transferred. When an individual sends a virtual currency to someone else, they are signing over their ownership of the Bitcoin, for example. The public and private keys are compared, and if they match, the ownership is transferred and the transaction is recorded on that blockchain. Now, if you watched the Super Bowl, you saw a masterful commercial with a mysterious QR code changing colors and floating around the screen. And I say masterful because in 1 minute, over 20 million people visited the landing page for Coinbase, which is the people that put the commercial on. And that's just amazing. So here's why you should consider transacting in cryptocurrencies in your cannabis business. And before we go forward, I feel like I should repeat a general disclaimer. This video and the related materials are designed only to provide general information regarding the subject matter discussed during the episodes. The statutes, authorities, and other laws cited in this video are subject to change. This video and the related materials are not intended to provide tax, accounting, legal, or other professional advice to any specific person or entity. Any advice or opinion regarding the application of the subject matter for a specific person or entity should be provided by a competent professional advisor based on an application of the appropriate law and authorities to the facts and circumstances applicable to that person or entity. You should consider fully the risks involved. Whew. Okay, so here we go. The first reason to consider them is cryptocurrencies have no intermediary, which means there's no central bank backing. So if you want to get out from under the monetary policies of any government and the unelected bureaucrats who control the money flow, cryptocurrencies are a place to find that. There's a reason why China has made it illegal to mine cryptocurrencies, and that's because they can't stand not having control over their money supply. Also, cryptocurrencies also provide anonymity, so there's no check copies that can be provided from your credit union to somebody else. You stay anonymous. But there is also great transparency inside the crypto market of how they are exchanged and how they are traded, and especially if you use a virtual wallet. And I don't mean transparency to the general public, I mean transparency to you. Another good reason is you see relatively lower fees for transacting in cryptocurrencies, and especially when considering the lack of safe banking in this country available to plant-touching companies. Transactions in cryptocurrencies are also irreversible. So once the money's in your wallet, it stays there unless you transfer it to somebody else or your wallet is stolen. Which, cyberjacking, by the way, is a real thing and is all over social media. Cryptocurrencies have worldwide use and access, and there's no tracking and no third-party seizure. And on this last point, I suggest to every client I work with that they do things the right way so that you don't have to worry about the government seizing your funds. But sometimes it happens by mistake, like it did recently in Georgia when law enforcement seized property and cash from a retailer selling legal hemp products in that state. The good news is the courts ordered the cops to give it all back. With cryptocurrencies, though, you don't have to worry about it because no one can get your crypto unless you initiate a transfer of it. Now, with everything in life and in this business, it's not all unicorns and lollipops. There are some very real risks you should seriously consider before diving into cryptocurrencies. Most importantly, there is unbelievable volatility and risk of loss. For example, the value of most cryptocurrencies moves in sporadic directions based on little observable market conditions. Now, my personal crypto holdings, well, let's take a look at them. Let's see, in the last hour, we're we're actually up 4%. Now, we could be down 20% in the next hour. And that's the thing with the volatility of the crypto market. And lately, crypto has taken a real bath, as they say, on Wall Street. So if you do accept cryptocurrency for a quarter maybe that sells for maybe 45 or 50 bucks, by the time you get around to converting that to dollars, it could be worth 30 bucks or it could be worth 70 bucks. And that's a lot of risk to assume. Another risk to seriously consider is hacking and theft. As I mentioned before, we see this a lot on social media, and I can guarantee you that most of them are scams intended to get your money and your crypto wallet. Not all of them, but there are a ton of them on Instagram, and they usually involve very elaborate schemes to steal from you. Now, like every other growth industry, ours included, dealing in cryptocurrencies can be a little bit buggy. There's not a lot of rules and not a lot of regulations, and a lot of folks trying to make a fast buck. So maybe not fully fleshed out systems. So just be aware of that. And as we talked about before, wallets can be stolen, so there's no guarantee of value and there's no buyer protections. So if you go buy something at Best Buy, for example, using cash or your credit card, and it doesn't work out, well, you just go right back in, return the item, and get a credit. There's really no mechanism right now to do that with cryptocurrencies. And I guess the last downside is there's no physical asset. They're coins, yes, but they're virtual coins, so there's nothing to jingle in your pocket. Now, only you can decide if the benefits of cryptocurrency outweigh the risks. But if you do decide to use them, here are some regulatory considerations. For federal tax purposes, virtual currency is treated as property, as we talked about before. General tax principles applicable to property transactions also apply to transactions using virtual currencies. Virtual currency cannot be reported as a currency transaction, and no foreign currency gain or loss can be claimed on a U.S. tax return. A taxpayer who receives virtual currency as payment for goods or services must, in computing their gross income, include the fair market value of the virtual currency measured in U.S. dollars as of the date the virtual currency was received. Now, taxpayers must also choose a valuation methodology for record keeping to determine tax basis for virtual currencies, so you've got some extra work to do there. Now, if a virtual currency is listed on an exchange and the exchange rate is established by market supply and demand, then the fair market value of the virtual currency is also determined by converting the virtual currency into US dollars or into another real currency, which in turn is converted into US dollars at that exchange rate in a reasonable manner that is consistently applied. So really, you can't just pick and choose when you're going to use a market and where you're going to use a different fair value methodology. And lastly, a payment made using virtual currency is subject to information reporting to the same extent as any other payment made in property. For example, a person who in the course of their trade or business makes a payment of income using virtual currency with a value of $600 or more to a U.S. non-exempt recipient in a single taxable year is required to report to that payment to the IRS and to the payee on Form 1099. Examples of payments of fixed and determinable income include rent and salaries and wages and premiums and annuities and compensation. Now, if you're interested in learning more about whether cryptocurrencies are right for your cannabis business, just drop a comment down below and we'll set up a time to talk. It sounded like a cheesy commercial, huh? Now, in full disclosure, I'm not a cryptocurrency expert, nor am I a miner or a trader. but I have done work in this area, so I'll fill you in on all the details and let you make an informed decision. I'll also give you more of my take on these so-called crypto traders and binary trading experts that we see all the time on social media. Stuff I probably really shouldn't say on a YouTube video if that gives you any indication about how I really feel about them. And if you want to learn more about anything I talked about in today's video, check out my website at www.thegreenleafcpa.com. There's a wealth of resources there just for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like. And if you'd like to see more, hit that subscribe button and click the bell. And if there is something that you're stuck on in your cannabis business, go ahead and drop a comment down below. I get back to every one of them personally. We drop new episodes each week, so I hope that you'll join us again. Thanks so much.